So council, just before we start, I know Marcy doesn't normally like me speaking before we start the meeting, but just before we start, just so you guys, everybody knows, when I'm working through new business 8.2 to so on, my plan is to try and use what Ellie taught us. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to say that there's a recommendation from committee of the whole. Are there any objections? If there's an objection, please tell me then, because then what I'll do is I'll go back and look for a mover and seconder, and then we can have a discussion and then move on. If you don't tell me that you're objecting when I ask, are there, we have a recommended motion from the committee of the whole, are there any objections? If nobody says anything, then what I will be doing is saying, hearing none, the motion is passed unanimously. Okay, so please let me know if you object. That is your time. Don't say after the fact. Well, wait a second. But we'll be patient with it. We'll work through it tonight. Sorry, Mars.
I'll let it go this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
And the meeting's live streaming and you're ready to go whenever.
Excellent, thank you. So it is 6:30, so I'm going to call to order the City of Colwood, Monday, April 12th, regular council meeting, and it is 6:30 p.m. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting this evening on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. If council could please unmute themselves, I'll just do a verbal roll call for everybody, please. Councillor, and I'm just going to go who's on screen, so there's no alphabetical order tonight. Councillor Parkinson.
I'm present, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
Present, your worship.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Here.
Thank you. And Councillor Jansen.
Present.
Thank you. And Mayor Martin here is as well. So moving on to 2, approval of the agenda. We have a near-term agenda, long-term agenda, and a regular council meeting agenda. It is recommended that the near-term and long-term agendas be received and that the agenda of the regular council meeting of April 12th be adopted as presented. Are there any objections? And I see a hand up, Councillor Jansen. Did you want?
I was gonna move a lot of it.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. No, I'm just working off of unanimous consent. Thank you though. So seeing no objections, the motion is passed. Moving on to public participation. We had one written correspondent that all of council should have seen, and we do have one person who has registered to speak. So I will look to staff to allow that person in.
I'm just asking the participant to unmute. There we go. Hi there, you're at the City of Colwood Public Participation. If you could please give your name and address council.
Yes. Hello, it's John English calling from 401 Proctor Place. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to council.
Mr. English, sorry. Right? Yeah, Mr. English, yes, we can. My apologies. I just have to read something, and it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to be said. Comments pertaining to matters that have been the subject of a public hearing are prohibited where the bylaws related to the matter have not been presented to council for consideration of adoption. The following items have been subject to a public hearing. Bylaw number 1840, which is the retail cannabis at 310 Goldstream. Bylaw number 1700-04, which is the Royal Beach sub-area plan and bylaw number 1837 CD30 zone Royal Beach. Mr. English, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're calling in this evening because the Royal Bay Homeowners Association would like to extend our endorsement of the waterfront improvement plan needs assessment report that's been prepared by city staff. We've, as you probably know, we've spent quite a bit of time speaking with other communities with destination waterfronts and also developments, including Whistler Blackcomb, and we're very pleased to see that many of the concepts that have been articulated in that report have been reaffirmed in past discussions with us, with those other people who have experience in these kinds of matters. And so we just wanted to extend our endorsement of the report. And we, in particular, we wanted to really stress the importance of one of the statements or observations in the report, and that is that the recognition of the OCP goal of making the Colwood waterfront a world-class destination for citizens and visitors alike as being a key goal of the city. This is very good to see because we strongly believe that with an ongoing focus on the key goal that the city has for the waterfront, if everything is assessed against that criteria, whether it be new proposals from developers, if Seacliff wants to do something different or sell chunks or and not do what they say, who knows? But if everything is assessed against this goal, it will really help the city keep things on track to the achievement of what the entire community has been looking forward to for many years on the Colwood waterfront. So we wanted to stress the importance of that, and we just again wanted to reaffirm our support for the report that's being submitted, I believe, as item 8.1 this evening. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to confirm with staff no one else has snuck in at the last moment to speak.
That's correct. That was the only one we had registered. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So moving on then to Mayor's message, staying on the same theme of the waterfront, I just wanted to give the public just some general information just about what's happening right now with the ferries and the aspiration around the West Shore Ferry. So really the next logical step that we're looking at as a city is that we're looking to the province to fund a full feasibility study. That full feasibility study is clearly outlined in the pre-feasibility study that was already done by SNC-Lavalin. A letter was written by myself to the Minister of Transportation in January requesting a full feasibility study be done. The minister replied back in March and is basically looking for leadership and advice from the CRD and the priorities of the region. And is basically looking at that. So where we're at right now is the CRD has a transportation committee, which will be meeting on April 21st. And the West Shore Ferry will be part of that discussion. Out of that, recommendations will be made and will go to the May 12th CRD board meeting. That's sort of what's going on right now. You may have noticed that there's a citizen group that has recently begun. And if you go to Facebook, it is the Colwood Passenger Ferry Facebook page. It started about a week ago, and right now there's close to 200 members who have already joined. So there's definitely some energy happening there. So if members of the public are looking to get involved at all in regards to that, I encourage you to go there and probably and find some opportunities to participate in that discussion. As well, you are always encouraged to share your opinions here with this council, but also I would encourage you to share your opinions at the CRD board level. The only other thing I'd like to share, and this is thanks to Councillor Day. Councillor Day brought this to my attention, and I think it's a wonderful thing to celebrate for our community. And I'm just going to read it. The participating schools have been announced for active school travel pilot project. There were, I believe, I'm just going to have a quick look. It looks like there was about 10, 11 schools that were selected throughout the entire province. So we're looking at 11 elementary schools in places, for example, Richmond, Vancouver, Gibsons, Hagenborg, which I'm not even sure where Hagenborg is. I'm going to look that up. Cumberland, Victoria, Smithers, and then as well, Colwood. So I'm just going to read the news release really quickly. In the wake of closures and restrictions due to COVID, finding opportunities for school-aged children to be active has never been more challenging. Thankfully, the commute between home and school offers an opportunity for many students across the province to build physical activity into their day. The BC Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, in partnership with BC Healthy Communities, has selected 11 schools to participate in a pilot project to increase the number of students using active transportation in their commute between home and school. The school that was selected in Colwood was Sangster Elementary, which is great news. And a quick quote from the Minister of Transportation: "This is an exciting program that will help students be physically active at the start and finish of every school day. Our government is proud to work collaboratively with communities to break down barriers and support more students and their families to walk, wheel, cycle, or skateboard to school." So that's wonderful, and we look to hear further results when they come out. So thank you all, and that is all of my mayor's message for tonight. So I'm going to move on now to 5, which is the adoption of, sorry, I'm just opening up my notes. The adoption, minutes for adoption. This is the regular council meeting, minutes of March 22nd. Are there any objections? Councillor Day.
Thank you. The minutes are accurate in that they describe who was there and what topics they presented on. But for example, where we had a member of the public speak, they of course usually have a few things to say. And one of the concerns that I have is that some of their concerns are not reflected in the minutes. One of the concerns was voiced by a member of the public who was concerned about the tax increase. We had a couple of people speak to that, and that is not reflected in the minutes. We also had a presentation from the West Shore Arts Council. There was quite a bit of information presented, questions and answers, but there is no information in the minutes. So I don't want to be critical. I know that we're trying to be very concise, but I think we need a little more meat on the bones, and I thought this would be the right time to say so.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Earl, would you like to comment at all?
Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to. I'm not sure the history of Colwood's minute-taking practices and how we've got to where we are now. Certainly, administration can arrange an opportunity for council to have a discussion about the degree to which our minutes are decision-only minutes or narrative minutes or somewhere in between.
Great, thank you. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe in my mind, minutes have become somewhat passé when the video lives forever on our webpage and on YouTube. So I think anyone that's looking to fact check can simply find that with a couple of Google searches, and I would prefer our staff not waste our time getting into this level of granularity with regard to minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't want to get into a long debate about the concept of minutes and discussion. I've heard from Councillor Day that she's looking for some additional detail. What I can do for Councillor Day is I can say we can definitely look at bringing this forward at a future council meeting to discuss that rather than having a detailed discussion this evening. I will go to Councillor Baxter, just because he does have his hand up, and then what I will do is come back to the minutes. Councillor Baxter? Oh, Councillor Baxter, you're muted.
Thank you. To keep it short, I think the presentations by the public that Councillor Day is referring to happened on the 29th, but I could be wrong.
Thank you. So what I will do is I will endeavor to speak to staff sort of offline, and then bring something back to council, at least to have a full council decision. And if this council wishes to continue with the minutes that are presently being presented to us, we can, or if we're looking for more details, we can make that decision at that point. So I will promise to council, I will make sure and then endeavor to bring this back. With that, then I will ask one more time, are there any objections to the minutes? Seeing none, I will, being none, that the motion is passed unanimously, and that still feels awkward for me, but I'm getting there. Moving on to 6.1, I will go to Mr. Borhill. Mr. Borhill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight we've got a presentation by DG Blair. She's graciously offered to walk us through the Green Shores criteria and program. The reason she's here is that within our OCP, as many of you may know, the city's required to adhere to the Green Shores for coastal development criteria. So this ties in directly to the project update on the waterfront improvement plan that we're going to be hearing about later this evening. And with that, I'll pass it over to DG. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thanks so much, Ian. I will now share my screen. And here we go. And I'll just do a double check. Everybody can see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And so this evening, as Ian mentioned, I'm going to speak a little bit about Green Shores and how it's a multi-pronged tool in the Coastal Resilience Toolbox. As Ian mentioned, my name is DG Blair, and I'm Executive Director of the Stewardship Center for British Columbia. And for those who are not familiar with the Stewardship Center, we are a provincial nonprofit originally formed from an intergovernmental working group, and our mandate is to strengthen ecological stewardship in British Columbia by providing educational, technical, and capacity programs and resources to organizations, governments, the private sector, and the general public through collaborative partnerships. And Green Shores is a keystone program of the Stewardship Center. So I thought I'd start with a photograph of what a Green Shores for Homes project looks like. So this was a project that was completed in 2018, and it's really an example of the success of Green Shores in BC. But it didn't start out that way. It took a number of tools used by various players to have this result. So I'll just start with a key idea, and that is local governments, shoreline professionals, and local citizens can achieve improved coastal resilience by utilizing the Green Shores Toolbox. So you might ask, what's in the toolbox? Well, we found that developing the Green Shores credit and rating systems that Ian referred to is great. It is the backbone of Green Shores, but it wasn't enough. We needed to have the guidance, but we also have support for local governments through a working group. We offer Green Shores training. We offer Green Shores certification for projects that meet the standard. And we also have an approved professional designation and community of practice. So in the following slides, I'm going to give you a little bit more information about all these aspects. like to.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Do you mind if I just interrupt? Normally, I just want to check. How long were you planning? How long is the presentation booked for? Normally, we only have 5 minutes for presentation, but it looks like you have a lot more slides than that.
Oh yeah, I understood I could have 12 to 14 minutes.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No, that's fine. I just wasn't sure what staff had told you.
That's yeah. Okay.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Mayor. This is a complement to our later presentation on the waterfront improvement plan. So we're looking at this presentation as akin to a staff presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is just an example of a before Green Shores, and then this is an example of after. And another before for a shoreline park project over in Vancouver, and another one after. You can see how you have a lot more diversity and function. So those are some examples, and we'll just back up a bit. And so Green Shores, you might want to wonder why it was developed. Basically came out of Coastal Shore Stewardship Guide, which really talks about the key points of how we can be good stewards of the BC coast. It was launched through a series of workshops, but the feedback was, we need more detail. What does this actually look like on the shore? And so the concept was born about developing something like LEED for the shoreline. It was 5 years in development, the first credit and rating system, and that was Green Shores for Coastal Development, which your OCP refers to. So for those who aren't familiar with the 4 guiding principles of Green Shores, basically Green Shores is a rigorous standard that adheres to these guiding principles. The first is that we want to preserve or restore shoreline physical processes. We want to maintain or enhance habitat function and diversity along the shore. We want to prevent or reduce pollutants from entering the aquatic environment. So in this case, we're not only concerned with what happens at that interface between land and water, but what happens upland as well. So we want that riparian area. And then finally, we want to avoid or reduce cumulative impacts to the shore. So all Green Shores certified projects must meet these guiding principles. So I also want to mention that Green Shores is evidence-based, and those principles do work. So Racy et al. In 2020 noted that coastal habitat can provide significant risk reduction to coastal communities. That field-based studies from around the world reveal that coastal habitats can reduce wave heights from 35 to 71%. However, shorelines hardened with seawalls support less biodiversity and less organisms than natural shorelines. And also that evidence suggests that both natural and nature-based approaches for hazard mitigation can be effective or can be equally or more effective than conventional approaches, and they often are more cost-effective. So the Green Shores approach provides a framework and guidance which forces the design team to consider a more holistic approach to the design process at an early stage and assign value to all the ecological functions. And we do that through these 2 credit and ratings guides. They're developed as tools to develop properties in a shore-friendly way, and they work on a credit and rating framework where the best practices, you incentivize more best practices going into each and every project. So looking at Green Shores for shoreline development, generally it promotes greater setbacks, soft shore approaches, and it really incorporates the understanding of the site. And so you design with the site in mind. Currently, we have a total of 7 of these larger projects enrolled, and we have 4 projects that have met the credit and rating system. So projects that are addressed by Green Shores for shoreline development include parks and recreation areas, marsh, land and tidal wetland restoration, commercial waterfront development, subdivisions, and multifamily residential. And the idea here is that Green Shores for shoreline development is intended to incrementally improve the shoreline sort of ecological function etc. So here I've got another example. And this is in the Fraser River estuary. This is a lovely industrial site before. And here you can see the Dureen, which is, I did want to note that the location did require flood protection, but they utilized this innovative dike design to allow for flood protection and setbacks sufficient for the Fraser River and the Sturgeon Slough. And we had a project team, including coastal engineers, geotechnical engineers, landscape architect, and civil engineer. And often on these larger projects, this is what the design team and construction team looks like. And what's really exciting about this is that the design supports both riparian function as well as flood and erosion protection. It achieved a Green Shores for Shoreline Development Gold rating. And you can see what's kind of cool about this. If you didn't even know that there was flood protection works on this site, you can't really even tell at the end. And that's often the beauty of Green Shores projects. So just also want to mention that we have some credits for exceptional performance and innovation. And this is on the left-hand side, you can see the Beach Creek Restoration Project, which is enrolled in Green Shores for Shoreline Development in Qualicum Beach. And then certainly a lot around public education and outreach. And on the right, you see the New Brighton Park restoration there. So Green Shores for Homes, I'm just going to touch quickly on this. Obviously, it's for residential properties. And the idea here is that you want to encourage these incremental improvements by more best practices going in each and every project. And it's based, again, on the 4 guiding principles. And again, pictures speak louder than words. Here's the before shot. This is in a Nanaimo area, and you can see the hardened seawall, not really any riparian vegetation except that tree. And then this is the after. And what's kind of neat about this project is that the folks originally, they were new homeowners at the site, and they thought originally that they were going to expand the seawall out. And then after finding out about Green Shores, they did a complete change and restored their function there, did not extend their seawall, took it out. And they said becoming involved, reading and learning about the benefits of Green Shores through this project has been enlightening and fun. And they look forward to enjoying the garden, maturing and evolving with the hope of it being inspiration for neighboring waterfront owners. And they say, best of all, the birds love it. So right now we've got 16 total projects for Green Shores for Homes that have been enrolled. And as I mentioned, we've got 7 projects and very exciting. We just meeting next week. We are starting in Nova Scotia, and we have our first project to be enrolled in Nova Scotia next week, I believe. So you might want to ask why project certification? And really it's all about walking the talk. And this is especially important for, I think, local governments, if they want their citizens, their shoreline property owners to also adopt those 4 guiding principles. So that third-party verification process does offer compelling proof that a project has achieved high environmental standards. And obviously it's demonstrating those policies that you want to have happen throughout your shore, and that leadership. And eventually we're looking at incentives right up the chain through an expedited permitting process with the provincial and hopefully eventually the federal government. Just touch on briefly that we do have a Green Shores local government working group, which the City of Colwood is more than welcome to join. We work together on community education and engagement. So we offer community-based workshops. one per year. We also have joint proposals for work like demonstration projects. We seek funding opportunities, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning that goes on for policy development and planning. And every once in a while, this is just pre-COVID, we get together and we did a harbor tour there in Victoria. And we also offer training in collaboration with University of Victoria and BCIT. We have an introduction to Green Shores, which we offer at the community level. We have Green Shores, what we call level 2, which is really targeted at shoreline practitioners so that they can provide good advice to their clients. And then finally, we have Green Shores level 3, which is for approved professionals. And I'm pleased to say that your consultant, Paul DeGrief, is a Green Shores approved professional. So that's our latest training offering. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on this report that we had commissioned and was finalized last year. And it was really looking at an evaluation of Green Shores in British Columbia. And the results, when they looked at the ecological, economic, and cultural benefits versus the cost for 3 Green Shores projects in the Green Shores program in total, they noted that there it came out to be a net 7-to-1 net benefit to cost ratio. So really, when you look at things from a broader perspective of what they call a triple bottom line evaluation, the cost is very low in terms of the overall benefit. So I'm hoping that this presentation provided an overview that by using Green Shores, local governments and shoreline professionals and local citizens can achieve increased coastal resilience by utilizing the Green Shores toolbox. So with that, thank you. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. I will look to council. Council, do you have any questions? I'm not seeing any hands. So thank you very much for the presentation. And we may have some more questions as we get into 8.1.
Great, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We're going to move on to 7.1. Marcy, could you please put up the recommendation, please? So 7.1, this is a letter from Mayor Mike Little of the District of North Vancouver and the Mayor of Mayor Lisa Helps, from the City of Victoria. And this is in regards to Helping Cities Lead campaign. There, you do see the recommendation in front of you. Is there any objections? Please raise your hand because I can't see you. Seeing no, oh, I do see a hand. So I will need to go to a mover and seconder then. So Councillor Parkinson has objected, so I am going to lower hands. Councillor Parkinson, go ahead.
I just wanted to make the point that there seemed to be 5 issues that were of concern, of which 3 were addressed, and the other 2 seemed to deal with perhaps building standards and things like that. But I'm not sure as a city we're ready to dive into it. I don't understand. The province obviously looked at it, selected 3 of the 5 as being worthwhile and moved forward with them. Didn't for the other 2, and I frankly have no idea why they didn't, or I haven't heard their side of the argument. So this seems to be moving forward, perhaps at a different pace than some of the people who wrote to us would like. But I guess I'm not. I don't feel equipped to support these last 2 issues at this time.
Okay, do you have so are you, do you have a recommendation? Are you
I would just receive the letters myself. I wouldn't bother sending out letters asking for more from the provincial government at this time.
Okay, so I have 2 other hands. So I have 3 other hands. So I will go to people and then I'll look for a mover and seconder once everybody has an opportunity to speak. Councillor Baxter, then Dave, then Jansen. Councillor Baxter. I can't see you, Councillor Baxter, but I'm going to guess that you're muted.
Good guess. I'm going to ask Councillor Parkinson to be specific about where the two things that he doesn't think we need are.
Councillor, Councillor Parkinson, are you able to answer Councillor Baxter's question?
Agreed, yeah. So, yeah, so the 5 issues were property assessed clean energy financing, mandatory home energy labeling, regulating greenhouse gas emissions for new buildings. Those 3 are moving forward under the provincial government. The second 2 that the provincial government elected to not proceed with at this time were regulating greenhouse gas emissions from existing buildings and mandatory building energy benchmarking and reporting. And to be frank, if the province looked at those 2 and decided it wasn't time to move forward, who might argue with them? So,
Councillor
Okay.
Baxter, does that answer your question?
It does. So I have to say there would be no point to this letter if we weren't going to argue with the province. Basically, we're trying to urge the province, if we do this, to not only, for instance, undertake regulating GHG emissions for new buildings, but to allow us, and they may wish to do it themselves, regulate emissions for existing buildings. There being far more existing buildings than there are new buildings. That would seem to be the bigger task, but also the more important task. And let's face it, even the leader of the Conservative Party agrees that climate change must be tackled. And the mandatory building energy benchmarking and reporting, I know for sure that's been done elsewhere. That was mandatory upon sale of a building in Britain, has been for years. And it encourages people to take action themselves, so that when they do come to sell their buildings, it's a more attractive building to other people. So I think that's a good one. It's not expensive to do energy benchmarking, and it encourages people to fix these things themselves. So I fully support the list. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I also support the list, and my reasons are really rooted in the reality of what I've been hearing from community members, especially during the pandemic. One of the only things that I think everyone agrees on is that it's been so nice to have clearer air and less traffic and less emissions, and that maybe the world is getting a little respite during this pandemic. So I think this is a very good initiative. It brings sensible recommendations forward that have been tried elsewhere. It's not, some sort of out of the box thinking that is unproven. This is really basic stuff. And after the Industrial Revolution, we look in all our history books and we see the chimneys and the smokestacks and the poor air quality as being like, what were they thinking? I don't know why we wouldn't apply that same philosophy to ourselves and at least be aware and know what we can do to make a difference. So I would argue that it's worth supporting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen, your hand was up and then you put it down. Did you wish to speak to it, or can I look for a mover and seconder? Councillor Jansen has his hand up now. Councillor Jansen, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to change my mind, which is my right. I'm just kidding.
What?
I don't have to say.
Okay, I'm going to look to Councillor Day and Councillor Baxter seem to be supportive of this motion. So I'm going to assume, Councillor Day, you feel comfortable with being the mover, and Councillor Baxter, you're comfortable with being the seconder?
Absolutely.
Please. Great,
Yes.
thank you. Then I will go to any further discussion. there any other further discussion on the motion that's in front of us? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition, please raise your hand. Councillor Parkinson opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 7.2. Marcy, if we could put up the next motion, please. Thank you. This is Nikia Hardis, coexisting with Carnivore Alliance and Samantha Webb from Wildwise, and Mayor Maya Tate from the District of Souk in regards to a moratorium on recreational wolf hunting on Vancouver Island. You do see the motion that is proposed in front of us. Do I have any objections? Seeing none, then that motion will pass with unanimous consent. Thank you. Moving on to 8.1, Mr. Borhill. Oh, Mr. Borhill, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight we've got another presentation from Paul DeGrief of Murdoch DeGrief Landscape Architects. He's our lead consultant on the waterfront improvement plan. He's going to be presenting a project update to accompany the first deliverable, which is the needs assessment report that's also attached to tonight's agenda. Paul is going to be joined by Dr. John Harper, a coastal geomorphologist, who is another member of the project team. Before turning it over to Paul, I'd like to note that the consultant team was introduced to the Waterfront Coastal Process Committee at their February 25th, 2021 meeting, and we'll be engaging that group later this month ahead of releasing the next deliverable, which is the shoreline assessment report. With that, I turn it over to Paul. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ian. Ian, before I get going, can I ask how much time we have for the presentation, just to make sure I don't step out of bounds here?
I'll defer to his worship, but we had planned as much time as needed to get through the presentation, so 15, 20 minutes plus additional time for Q&A as required.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we can keep it at 15, we'll keep everybody's attention.
Okay. All right. I'll try and keep it. I'll try and keep it tight. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for affording us the time to present. Our consulting team is very excited, and we're kind of through our first kind of phase of the project, and we'll be starting the design process very soon. Just to double check here, are you seeing my slide okay?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
We are, however, we're also seeing your next slide in your notes section.
Oh, that's okay.
So it's not in full view for you, just so you know.
Yeah, I had this problem earlier.
It's still very seeable. I believe we can all make it out.
You can live with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's not giving me the option to switch, so I'm just going to get going, and hopefully, if it's a problem, if it's too small, let me know, and I can try and fix it. Okay. So a little bit on the planning context, the structure of the waterfront improvement project that we're working on. I'll explain a little bit about the work that we've done to date. The Waterfront Coastal Processes Committee, this will be a bit of review for you, but we've added a bit of new content, and then I'll talk about the conceptual design process. I do have John Harper with me. He was going to give a bit more of an in-depth presentation on the sediment processes on the shoreline. I'm actually going to, John, I hope you're not too upset with me. I'm thinking we're going to omit your section of the presentation.
No, let's not do that. Let's do it all. It's just no. I mean, we need council needs to hear all of it, so we'll do it all.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I will try and keep it brief, but hopefully it's worth your time here. So the fortunate thing for us as consultants is there's a really great set of guidance documents that we see the waterfront improvement plan being embedded in. Reference was made to that by the resident who spoke earlier, and referencing a statement in the official community plan about a world-class waterfront. And more recently, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan has given us a jump start on our work on the waterfront improvement plan project. So we kind of see ourselves in this position where we're going to be developing a physical plan with an implementation strategy. It's not detailed design, and it's certainly not construction, but it's going to get, we're hoping that it's going to be very evocative and graphic and spark imagination for the community. So our proposal was very much centered around green shores. You'll recognize some of the graphic qualities here with the Green Shores presentation that was just given. And we, as virtue of having worked with Green Shores, we recognize the shoreline as being a complex nut to crack. There's a lot going on this shoreline. There's lots of different interests, different values, and different pressures. So by virtue of that, we have pulled together a fairly diverse, multidisciplinary team, some of whom are working more in the background, but myself and John Harper sort of leading the way in both describing the system, and then the next step will be designing. So I'll return to this graphic a few times, and it's a bit of a busy graphic, but I'll work my way through each of these components to explain how we're going to arrive at a plan through a design process. So in terms of guiding plans and policies, we've talked about OCP guidance. The draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan is giving us clues about continuous waterfront pathway, for example. So those are all really useful pieces of information that are jumpstarting the process for us. In terms of this multidisciplinary approach to studying the shoreline, we have actually just completed the multidisciplinary shoreline assessment report. It was literally sent in just today. So excited about that. That's now under our belt, and staff will have a chance to review it. But really, this is all about describing what Colwood has. And I'm going to turn it over to John then, and let him work through a description of the shoreline as a system, as an integral unit. So John, are you there with us?
I don't want you to have to tell me to unmute. This is a favorite quote of both Paul and I's about armoring the shorelines, and it's very common throughout the developing world about it's happening incrementally all over the place, and not because anybody wants it to happen, because nobody says it shouldn't happen. So anyway, next one, Paul. And I've just got a little one slide schematic on sediment transport systems, and I'm sure the council in Colwood are pretty familiar with that, but this is James Island from just around the corner, and it's showing that the south facing bluffs that are eroding away, they get impacted by the southeast storms, and those are the source of material, and then the waves transport the material around each margin of the island there. And there's little spits growing on each side of the island and lagoons in behind. In one case, the lagoon on the right has been filled in by a golf course. But anyway, that's the basic system: sources, transport, and sediment sinks. Next one, Paul. And so when we look at the Colwood system, I like to think of it in three different eras. And you have this, era which probably has been for the last 3,000 years, and that's where the cliffs to the south of the pit were eroding, and that's how the cliffs, those big steep cliffs, got there. That material was eroding, being transported to the north, and material accumulating in the barrier spit in front of the lagoon and enclosing the lagoon there. And so it's kind of the same system with those various components: a source, transport, and a sediment sink, all driven by the southeasterly waves. And some of the things we know, this is an early photo, late 1800s photo of the spit, and you can see the pebble cobble on the surface. You can also see what looks like undulations, which indicate the spit was overwashed. There's not much, hardly any vegetation on there. So it's a very ephemeral feature and washed over easily. And I was trying to find a modern day analogy, and I went to a place I've worked in the past with the Chukchi Sea, has long barrier islands, and this is one that the wave energy is on the Chukchi Sea side, but it frequently overwashes those barrier islands and washes into the lagoon. You can see the washover channels. The sediments on that spit are very close to that late 1800 photo of the spit there. So it's kind of a modern day analogy. And the important part of that is that the spits wash over, but there's very little loss of sediment during those washover events. Next one. And we did do some profiles across to look at the slopes and things on the spit and the elevations of the road. And one of the interesting, so these are relative to the zero tide line. So the road's about 4.5 meters or so above low water level. But just to the south of the spit, we've got a very recent storm berm, and that berm has been building up. It's an accretional feature right now in front of those big stabilized cliffs, and it's 5.3 meters. So a natural system can actually build things up in there. And next one. So that's sort of there's a pre-disturbance part, and then we have the gravel pit. And the gravel pit was very leaky. It introduced a different sediment source, sand sediment source. Some went to the south, and it protected those cliffs to the south so that they became stabilized and developed a big tree canopy on it. But most of the material went to the north, and it accumulated both as sand on top of the spit, but it also accumulated in around Fort Royal Hill Park there. And that's because in 1951, the causeway to Fiskard Light was built, and it's actually a very effective sediment trap. So since the 1950s, it's accumulated about 60,000 cubic meters of sediment. That's works out to about 10,000 cubic meters per year has been accumulating up there. And it's changed the dynamics of the inlet a little bit too. And there's been a lot of change right around the inlet. Next one, Paul. And then, of course, the big question is, okay, what's going to happen now? And there's a couple things changed. Of course, the gravel pit stopped, so we've lost our sediment source, and also it's going to be, we have increasing sea level. So our expectations are that the beaches will narrow, the sediment transport system will continue, and we will probably reactivate the cliffs to the south there, and that will continue on moving material up to the north. And so the message here is that, you know, it's, if you decide to protect those cliffs to the south, then the sediment transport continues. And if you protect that system, then you alter the budget of the whole system. It means less material available for supplying sediment to the spit area as well. So, and there are other examples in BC, like this Goose Spit has been totally armored there, and now there's virtually no beach in front of that. And Pat Bay, where I lived for a while, people used to have little vacation cottages there, and they took the train out from Victoria but now it's all rocky on the shoreline because the riprapping of the shoreline stopped the sediment supply there. So we went out and walked the shoreline about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and about 19% of the shoreline has been armored, and that's the left plate. And on the right, there's still about 15% of the shoreline with actively eroding cliffs along there being cut into the shoreline. Next one, Paul. And that brings us to the bigger picture of where are we now and where can we go? So doing a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat analysis. And one of the strengths of Colwood is, you know, sand beaches are really rare in British Columbia. Sand beaches near population centers are exceptionally rare. So that's a huge asset in a way that Colwood has. There's not many property owners, so you can do a lot of things with that the council has control of, and there's very little hard infrastructure on the shoreline. So those are all advantages. The sediment supply that has been there for the last 100 years, that's stopped, unfortunately. So, and there's also a lack of consideration about the system as a whole. You know, these things are all connected. So if you stop sediment supply, what's going to happen in other parts of the system? There is opportunities, both in the master plan for the Parks and Recreation. They've indicated that they're very aware that change is likely to go ahead. So by building change into the plan now and having that as part of the plan, you can avoid surprises in the future. Like, it's not a surprise that the beaches are narrowing and getting coarser, and you can have soft approaches built into the management. You know, 10,000 years ago, the sea level was 20 meters lower, and then it came up to present levels about 5,000 years ago. That means there's a lot of beach sands in the immediate offshore there that are potentially available for beach nourishment projects. So, and then one of the threats is, you know, because the sediment supply is stopped, we can't predict really well how the system is going to change. But if we stop erosion in one part of the system, then it's going to affect another part of the system. And Paul has kindly placed a little elephant there, just the elephant in the room, that tinkering with one part of the system affects the whole system. So anyway, that's just a little overview of the coastal processes.
Thanks so much, John. When John mentioned that we were out taking field measurements, and Councillor Parkinson almost ran us over on the spit, so he can attest to the fact that we were out there. I'm only kidding. He did stop and say hi. So some of the other elements that we're looking at, in addition to the sediment system and the natural system function, are things like infrastructure, archaeological resources, and of course environmental considerations, which of course Green Shores is centered around the stewardship of ecological values. There's been quite exhaustive reports produced. They are part of the multidisciplinary report that's just been submitted to staff. So that will be available very soon. The other report that has been reviewed by staff and is complete is the needs assessment report. And it's a report that really looks at both the growth of the Colwood community as a whole and the region. And as you can see from this diagram, we're looking at adding upwards of 7,000 people in the immediate neighborhood surrounding the waterfront. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure that we're anticipating will be put on the waterfront area. But the needs assessment report also begins to speculate on the types of amenities and the scale of those amenities that might be required as part of a waterfront improvement plan. Things like parking, what's there now, what might be required in the future. Again, the waterfront multi-use trail. Well, there's nothing there now really that's formal, and the proposal is to have a trail that connects the whole waterfront. That's about 4 kilometers of trail. If you add in a loop, which is shown in red here, that's about a 10-kilometer loop that would be analogous to the trail around Beaver and Elk Lake, for example. So again, needs assessment report combined with this technical look at things like infrastructure and the sediment system, again, feed into this conceptual design process and give us the background that we need to move forward with confidence. So what about the tools? And I didn't know DG would actually describe Green Shores as a tool in the toolbox, but as landscape architects, like any other profession, we have tools that we employ when we try and tackle a problem like this. One of them is Green Shores. So I've become an advocate of Green Shores. I think it's a really valuable tool for assessing projects, applying on a shoreline project like this one. And it just provides those objective evaluation criteria. One of the other things that it does is it brings professionals that have had experience with shorelines together. This is just a before after of a beach nourishment project in Victoria. It's a fantastic local example of a very carefully engineered beach nourishment project at Ross Bay. And just a little, as my kids would say, a shout out to Glenn Willing, who was involved in actually moving gravel from the gravel pit onto this beach and coordinated the barging process. So he's part of the Waterfront Coastal Processes Committee and has been helping John and I with digging up interesting facts about the shoreline. And like I say, he was involved with this project. Another tool that we like to employ are principles of design. One of the principles that I particularly like is something called the Power of 10. It's developed by the Project for Public Spaces, which is I have a great website with a whole range of different planning tools. Power of 10 really just says, if you're going to create a critical mass in a great project, you need more than just, let's say, a waterfront walkway. And Colwood is really blessed with some really amazing core elements already. The north end, you've got the lighthouse, Port Rod Hill, you've got on the back shore of the lagoon, you've got Royal Roads. And if you can imagine those kinds of amenities being connected together with a multi-use path, you have the beginnings of something really special. And again, one other tool that we tend to use is just looking at what other communities have done. This is an example of a very visual project from White Rock. I think it's a good example of the illustrative quality that we want to be working towards with the Colwood Waterfront Improvement Plan. City of North Vancouver Spirit Trail is just a great example of a waterfront trail that connects a whole range of amenities that have been built along the North Vancouver shoreline now. So a good example of connecting with the Power of 10. And then the City of Campbell River is now working with a 3.5 acre public waterfront site to pursue partnerships. There's a great First Nations component in this project. So just good project examples that give us clues about how to move forward with Colwood. So from here, the engagement process and cost estimates is really our testing. It's our feedback loop in our design process. So as we now go away and move forward and begin to develop some crazy ideas, some hopefully really good ideas, we'll be bringing those back to you as council We'll be working with staff and with other community stakeholders to get feedback on which ideas resonate and which don't, and that'll help us refine the plan as we move forward. So just really quickly in terms of schedule, as I've mentioned, we've completed the needs assessment report and the multidisciplinary report, and the public consultation process is underway. So the Colwood Let's Talk website is populated with information for the first stage of public consultation. And then, as I mentioned, the conceptual design process is just getting going here. We'll be starting that this month. And our next council presentation will hopefully be in June. So thanks so much. And thank you again for giving us the time to work through this with you.
No, that was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I didn't mean to be rushing you. I'm going to be going to staff, or excuse me, not to staff, to council, to see if there's any questions. Unfortunately, I can't see anybody's hands. Oh, yes, I can. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a quick question here. I did, note that I guess you had a big question mark is how are we going to replenish the beach? Like, it seems to be the big number one issue, right? You can have all these plans, but you got to tackle the root cause problem here. So any ideas? Are you floating some ideas around right now on this? That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to just put John in the hot seat here and ask him to provide the solutions. John actually did this great little timeline description for me to sort of explain the history as we were working through the process of describing the sediment system, and then at the bottom put a little statement that said, "And Murdoch de Grief will solve all the problems." So we're definitely thinking about this. I would say that the options available include a very muscular approach to defend the shoreline. That wouldn't be my first reaction. It's not consistent with Green Shores, and it's difficult to retain recreational values and ecological values when you use a defend type of strategy. John mentioned beach nourishment. The Ross Bay project is a great local example of a very successful beach nourishment project. They do require careful consideration. The last thing you want to do is pump a bunch of sand onto the beach and have it all end up at the lighthouse in the first storm. So there is engineering, there is careful consideration that needs to go into a nourishment project. But as we work through the design process, we will begin to bring forward our recommendations for solutions that achieve a range of values for Colwood, and I'm hoping that the cost-effective and most value-filled solution sort of works its way through.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Fair enough.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm blessed that I sit on the Colwood Waterfront Committee that we work with, so I'll get my chance to really dig into this and get the details. So you'll all breathe a sigh of relief that I won't be going too deep into the weeds here. But there are a few things that pop out to me that I thought I would pass on as just comments more than anything else. Firstly, it did seem from reading your report and your presentation that you're kind of leading us towards beach nourishment as perhaps a solution to create our world-class beach. And I'm sort of neither here nor there on that one. That's certainly an option and good to think at. When we've talked at beach nourishment before, we've worried about forage fish and what it would do to them. So that would be, of course, an issue that can't be ignored. A couple of key players, First Nations, Canadian Wildlife Service. I know the intention is to involve them. Whether you can do that within the timeline proposed, I'm not sure, but I would myself place a priority on working with those organizations to make sure we get it right instead of saying, here's what we want to do, what do you think? So that if that, may delay your project, I don't know, our project. I was interested in your 10 places to make a wonderful event. And because I think that was the number, if I'm correct, that Royal Beach picked, they were going to have 10 separate parks on their property. Maybe it was 9. So again, it's coordination. They're working away on some kind of a parks plan on their property. Let's not have dueling people working on it, but hopefully there's some synergies that can be created to do it. And of course, the non-sexy part of this project, the boring part is that when we closed the spit last summer, we all got roasted alive for it. And we realized that it's very much part of our community as a transportation corridor. And it's just not going to work to say, let's leave it the way it is and let's have a walkway as well. We need to look at what, do we need bike lanes? Do we need traffic calming? Do we need a more organized parking system? It's really been discovered over the last couple of years. The parking down there, even in this early part of spring, is chock-a-block and people backing out, or people walkers having to walk around cars with no sight distance. So I'm not sure the best way to address that, but I'm sure you guys will take on that task with enthusiasm. So that's it. Just a few comments. I'm really quite impressed with how you're attacking this, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter. I was going to wait to see if he was going to mute himself. I didn't want to just be presumptuous.
We should get a little timer on the bottom of the page here.
I used to have a sticker below the iPad here, but I just never looked at it. I was looking at you guys. So over the last 15 years, I've looked at lots of reports about this, and this is the best one, far and away. So I'm really, really happy with it, except for one line. I have to complain about one single line. And it comes after the quote that you mentioned. That was your favorite quote. So it's on page 11 of the report section, waterfront planning best practices. And it's near the top there, first bullet. Balance environmental benefits with human needs. That would seem to imply that the environment is not one of humanity's needs. And I'd have to argue with that. I don't think we'd be around long if there was no environment. And so I would hope that that can be rewritten before this is made generally available. Otherwise, it's fantastic. Thank you.
Well, I am sure with a fantastic report, they can fix one line. So there you go. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, you kind of stole my thunder. That was exactly my issue too. My concern is to protect the environment, and I'm not too sure where all of them have been active lately, but there has been a lot of years of a lot of volunteer hours put in, especially with the Esquimalt Lagoon Stewardship Initiative, also with the Esquimalt Lagoon Enhancement Association. And those are were some really good efforts led by some great members of the community to try to not degrade the environment in the lagoon, to protect it, to remove any toxins that might be directed its way. But there's still, I guess the big elephant in the room is we still have big feeder bluffs with big houses at the top of them that are very valuable. And I'm not sure how our strategy can evolve without at least talking to them or talking about what the plan is to protect them. as well. So in everything that I've read, I really appreciate your approach. I've been following the Green Shores approach for about 10 years now. And I'm looking to hear from you. How do we balance some of those things that are just really staring us in the face and they're really hard? And you can just take that away with you. You don't have to have the answer tonight, just for your focus in future.
I'd love to make one little comment, if that's okay.
Please go ahead.
I actually, one of my first projects as a landscape architect moving to Victoria was doing the Bee Creek restoration. And it feels a little bit like coming full circle. And so, you know, it's definitely a passion of mine is ecological restoration, and you know, watching the growth of use of the Colwood waterfront over the years has just been really amazing to see. It's a space that is at risk of being loved to death. So it's very much on my mind, and as we move forward, it will likely be a very prominent piece of the design work that we put forward as ecological restoration.
Great, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Day.
Sorry, just one other issue, which was around the recommendation in the report for being able to put some mats down or something to allow for non-motorized boat access to the waterfront. And I just want to remind you that that would be very complementary to accessibility improvements. That is something we've been trying to figure out, how to get people with mobility issues to the edge of the water. A lot of times the Esquimalt Lagoon is the best that you can offer someone with a mobility issue, which is to park there and at least you can see the ocean, you can smell the ocean, you can listen to the birds. But very, very few places where you can actually touch the water or be at the water's edge if you have a mobility issue. So I think those two things could be complementary. And another wonderful group in our community is Power to Be, and they have done a number of adventures in both the lagoon and the ocean front for people who have disabilities, and they would be an excellent partner in finding solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Great, thank you. I will look back to staff. Staff, do you have anything else before I move on to 8.2?
If council feel satisfied in terms of the question and answer section, no, I've got nothing more to add. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will thank both Paul and John. Thank you so much for attending this evening. Very informative, very helpful, and we're glad that you're working with us with the city. So thank you, guys. Moving on to 8.2, Marcy, I'm going to ask that you put up the recommendation, please. So this is the 2021 to 2025 draft financial plan capital program. This is a recommendation from the March 3rd, 2021 and the March 16th, 2021 special committee of the whole meetings. You see the motion and the recommendations in front of you. Are there any objections? There is. So Councillor Parkinson, so I will go back then. Councillor Parkinson, I will let you speak in a moment. May I get a mover and seconder to the motion, please? It is moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Councillor Logan, do you wish to speak to it at all?
Sorry, no, Your Worship. I think we hashed it out pretty good. Committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Great, thank you, Councillor Baxter. You wish to comment?
Similar to Councillor Logan. If anybody wants to see the discussion, they can go back and watch the videos. But there's no point in repeating it here.
Great, thank you, Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you.
Do you wish to comment at all?
If I may. I know everybody's a little tired about listening to my concerns here. I'll try to be brief. But the first thing that Frank, and I have gone back to listen to the video, and I would like, for my own clarity, when we talk about the Allendale drainage pipe that's being taken out of the capital plan, I guess I would like confirmation. My understanding is that's a pipe that would come from the southern extension of the works on Veterans to the Allendale intersection. I guess I'd just like to know exactly where that pipe is. Is that correct there, Mr. Molnar?
Good evening, Council, and through the mayor. Councillor Parkinson, the pipe in Veterans Memorial Parkway is already there right to a manhole that's at the intersection with Allendale. That manhole has a stub out, which this pipe, which would go east to west, which was the consideration, would connect into Allendale itself running east to west. I think I missed your question though, because I think your question was more about the Veterans Memorial Parkway pipe. And so can I seek clarity?
No, I was just trying to understand the $1.6 million drain pipe that we've decided to defer from the project. You're saying was running east-west, so basically from the Veterans Allendale intersection east along Allendale to the extent of the construction. Is that the $1.6 million pipe?
That's correct. In the end, we still need a pipe. And with that pipe needs to pick up road drainage and such. And so we're working to fit that pipe in within the contingency factor of the budget that's been enabled for the project. But you are correct. It is the east-west pipe, which was 1.6 funded.
Thank you. It's for me, it was unclear. And then, okay, and that then works with the expression I heard used a couple of times that if in the end of the day this pipe was needed, it would be a re on Allendale. So I understand that we don't know yet what happens with the drainage in that area, but if at the end of the day, it does need to drain along Allendale to the Veterans intersection, that would mean digging up some of the works we're proposing to build this year and installing the pipe later. Is that correct?
Well, I actually know more information now since the consideration. So the minimal pipe works to capture the 1 in 10 from the built properties that are intended to be built under the agreement is approximately a 900 diameter. The cost to go to a 1050 is marginal. There does need to be a pipe in that roadway. We are going to proceed to tender with that 30% contingency of the existing budget to put in a 1050 and then be able to then reduce it to a 900 if necessary, based on constraints. But the budget difference between a 900 and a 1050 won't be much.
So there will be no digging up the new works to put in a pipe later. We just may have one that's a little larger than needed.
Yeah, where I instructed McElhaney to consider a surcharge capacity in the pipe that would allow for a little bit of extra flow if necessary. So we went about and did the 1 in 10 design, and you've got it correct.
Thank you so much. Okay, I was unclear there. So then the only other thing is on the first part of the motion, detailed information regarding scope and cost of the Allendale roadworks and services be provided to council. We don't have a timeline on that. I guess my assumption is that A, that it would include the drainage works, and B, that it would be prior to award of the Allendale intersection works. Is that the understanding? Should I make an amendment to the motion to that point, or is that what we expect here?
Through council, we will be out to tender. The final aspects of that design element are being inserted into the on-point design drawings, and we're working on releasing that tender package within a 2-week period. And correct, council will be part of the award consideration. So staff will come back to council with a report advising of the outcome, the budget constraints and the budget enablement of that, and then seek resolution from council to award.
And I guess that my concern about not knowing what's happening with the drainage in the Allendale area, you're saying has been addressed by there's a pipe, if in fact that we need to drain towards towards Souk Road, the pipe will be there to handle that water.
That's correct. And if we find out that comment that I talked about 9 to 1050 puts us over budget and outside that 30% contingency, that'll form part of that report at that time.
Thank you very much. That's enough for me, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. I'm just going to pause for a moment. I don't see any other hands, so I will call the question. The motion is in front of you. Those in opposition, please raise your hands. Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 8.3. Thank you. This is the CRD. May I get a mover and seconder, please? I will be voting against this, so I do need a mover and seconder. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by, need a seconder, please, Councillor Day. Thank you. Is there, Councillor Kobayashi, did you wish to discuss? I'm assuming you just was just moving it along. I'm not hearing anything. So Councillor Day, I'm assuming you don't wish to comment either.
No, I'm good.
Thank you. I won't comment myself. So I'm not seeing any other hands. So I will call the question. Those in opposition? And it's just Mayor Martin who opposes. Moving on to 8.4. This is the 2021 budget service recommendations. This is from the March 29th, 2021 Special Committee of the Whole. Do I have any objections to the motion? Oh, Councillor Kobayashi has, so I will go to a mover and seconder, please. May I have a mover and seconder to the motion? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Baxter, and seconded by Councillor Jansen. Just before I call or before I move forward, Councillor Kobayashi, do you wish at all for me to sever these 11? Do you want us to vote on all of them, or are you just comfortable with them being grouped?
I was, as you know, at Committee of the Whole, I was only in agreement with one anyway, so I think.
So I will then. Well, I will then sever because if that way gives you the opportunity to vote in favor of. So Council, I'm just going to stick with the same mover and seconder on all 11, unless there's an objection. So I'm just going to go through the motions 1 through 11 and just ask for opposition. So we are on 1, which is, I'm not going to read them all out there. You should have them, you can see it in front of you. Councillor Kobayashi, excuse me, Councillor Day, did you wish to comment before I move forward?
Yeah, just I was going to suggest that if we voted on one separately from the next 10, that might be quicker.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. Councillor Kobayashi, can I just confirm, is it one that you wish to support?
That is correct, Mayor Martin.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you, Councillor Day. So I will call the question just on 1, on motion 1. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. And then I'm going to group 2 to 11. Those in opposition? Councillor Kobayashi opposes 2 to 11. The motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to 8.5. This is the 2021 Heritage Inventory Update Report. There is a recommendation from the March 11th, 2021 Heritage Commission. Are there any objections? Councillor Parkinson has objected, so then I will look for a mover and seconder to the motion, please. Moved by Councillor Day, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Councillor Day, do you wish to comment?
No, I just think that the heritage work has been going very well since we have achieved our full membership of our commission, and I applaud them for moving forward expeditiously.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, do you wish to comment? As a
I just want to say here.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, do you wish to comment?
Yeah, I didn't get a copy of this report in my package. I have the recommendation in the agenda, but I must admit I'm not 100% sure what I'm dealing with here. I don't, like everybody else, I think the Heritage Commission seems to have really stepped up its game and seems to be doing a good job. But I guess I read this and I flip to the back to see exactly what they're talking about, and I don't have a copy of the report. I don't know if anybody else has it or if it wasn't meant to be there. Don't know.
I will look to staff. Staff, do you wish to comment?
Hi, Mr. Mayor, it's Ian Burhill here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this item came from the last Heritage Commission meeting. and it flows from the delivery of a consultant report that was undertaken to update the heritage inventory that was initially reviewed by the Heritage Commission in 2019. So what we did was we hired a set of professional heritage consultants that went through the community and determined that 6 of the properties that were identified in the 2019 review were actually still standing but heavily modified. We had initially thought that they were taken down. So the Heritage Commission recommendation flows from this work. Staff presented them with the updated report. It is attached to the agenda through the link under this item. So if you click on that link, you'll see the staff report. Staff's recommendation was slightly different than what the commission has put forward to council. They added to the recommendation that staff made in that report, which is available through that link, that they would like the location information added to the maps that are included in that WSP report. And they also added some language to the last part of the recommendation that would confirm that the engagement that's being recommended with the owners of the heritage inventory properties be part of an initial, be a first step in a process of more comprehensive heritage inventory communications that would flow from our heritage strategy. That project is just getting off the ground now. We're at the procurement stage for heritage consulting services and hope to be giving council an update as to which consultant has been chosen this quarter. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson, do you have any follow-up?
I guess just probably as a matter of practice, we get these big thick agendas. We used to get them all digitally. And now I understand I should have been using the digital thing to see what the Heritage Commission report that I'm supposed to vote on has to say. I'm not quite sure why that report didn't make the written documentation, whereas the others do. But I have faith that the Heritage Commission is moving along well and doing a good job. But again.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point, Councillor Parkinson. I think that should be included in the paper in the future, and we'll I'm sure staff will endeavor to do that. So it was a good point, Hope. I'm looking at any other hands. I'm not seeing any, so I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you.
Mayor Martin, Mayor Martin, a point of order here.
Yes. Sure, Councillor. Go ahead.
8.4, you didn't enable us to have discussion on that. I had objected, and I didn't get a chance to talk to it.
Certainly. I'm happy to go back. Let me finish this, and then we'll go back to 8.4. Did I call the vote on this? I got distracted. I can't remember. I'll call the vote again. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Okay, we're going to move back to 8.4. Councillor Kobayashi wishes to comment. Go ahead, Councillor Kobayashi.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship. I just want to make it very clear here. It's not that I don't disagree with any of these service recommendations, not one of them. I was part of the process back in the fall. And I'll tell you, in the fall, not understanding the whole scope of what we were going to be going through with COVID-19. And, the external factors have changed. And just so that I believe I confirmed this with Jen Hepton today, but with all these service recommendations approved now, the tax lift is no longer 7%, it's going to be 6.5%. It's still a big number. And the point I'm just trying to make right now, and I will say this, I agree with all these. It's just a matter of timing. The timing is not great. And this is why I object. It's not that I disagreed with the process. I want to make sure that's clear. And it's not that I disagree with any one of these. They're all valid items that have to be done. It was just a timing issue. And the other 2 points I just want to make that go along with that is that, we spent, and I calculated this, we spent 99.7% of our time discussing how we are going to spend money. and spent 0.3% on discussing how we're going to make money. And what I'm talking about is non-taxation revenue. How could we speed it up? How could we do things to make that dollar value bigger? And the second thing that we don't even talk about again is just our long-term sunk costs right now. And the discussions came up at various times. I know people brought these things up, but you know, and what I'm talking about, just so everyone understands what I'm talking about, is the sunk costs. It's just the long-term workflows and services that we provide right now. Is there a better way of doing things? And there were some great suggestions, but we never got recommendations out of it. And that's what frustrated me, because we can even cut some of the costs, I think. You know, technology is supposed to help us, but it just makes us spend more money right now. So I don't see the long-term benefit. So I just wanted to make those comments, and just to clarify my objection to item 8.4. And that's all I have to say, Mayor Martin. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm seeing other hands, so I'm going to provide the same opportunity. Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that with a 0% increase in total municipal taxes last year, and 6.5 this year, that is actually mathematically smaller tax lift than if we had done 2.25% last year and 2.25% this year.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. I have Councillor Day, then Jansen. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to explain why I support this. I do know that there are many parts of our community that are struggling with COVID, but it's not that I feel that you know, we should always be spending money, but what we really must do is we must protect our community. And if we don't have enough IT services, or we don't have people to follow up on issues that arise, then our community can and has been in the past at risk. So my reasoning for supporting these changes was that I think we developed one of the best processes I've seen in my term as being on council. And we did that without looking at the numbers as much as looked at what our needs are. So this budget, I think, represents the ability of the city to be able to do the things that the city needs to do to maintain our environmental integrity, to make sure that we can follow up on the things that would otherwise be at risk. If nobody's checking up on our internet, then all of our software costs are going to go way up. So my reasoning for supporting this has been to protect our community and maintain its integrity. And I will certainly work hard to help us realize new revenue streams in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was in favor of most of this, and I thought that we took a very diligent approach. And the bottom line is we talk to our neighbors and hear from the community. And more often than not, I hear about further maintenance, potholes, parks, Councillor Logan's planters, what have you. And the point being is, I think the public accepts to some degree that if we're going to expand services, that requires a cost. Now, this is we're in the business of providing services, and a wise old manager of mine told me that in the public sector, you're in the service delivery sector, and it's not about making dollars and cents. It's not like we can start a department and sell things, to generate income for the community. That's not what we're about. But what we are about is making modest improvements while diligently watching the bottom lines, Some years there might be a bit of a spike, and I do agree with Councillor Baxter wholeheartedly that we're left in this boat as a result of last year, as opposed to doing some marginal increases. And I think the community largely accepts that many of these things are desired by our constituents. And it's simple things like yes, the software is expensive and the people to operate the software is expensive, but I've spoken with people doing developments, even residential ones, and the fact that we don't have GIS mapping accessible and available to developers is we're behind the times here, and we are growing up, and it's time to catch up. And I see that many of these positions are catching us up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. I saw staff, but I'm going to move forward rather than dwelling on this. I gave council an opportunity to speak to it, and unless it's critical to speak, Mr. Molnar.
Thanks very much. Just 2 seconds. We have unveiled GIS to the public. The Youth Council has received 2 emails about it. I'm stretching over the last month. It is publicly accessible on our webpage, so it's exciting news.
Sorry, Brent, that was just an example. I wasn't throwing that project under the bus. That we are catching in different areas. So thank you for the clarity.
I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to move on to 8.6. If we could bring that motion up, please. This is from Rachel Buskey, our Economic Recovery Program Coordinator. This is in regards to the Economic Recovery Plan in regards to re-implementing the temporary patio reauthorization. Do I have an objection? I'm just going to put people's hands down just for a moment. Do I have any objections to this motion? Oh, I do. Okay, Councillor Logan. Okay, so Councillor Logan, I will come back to you. May I get a mover and seconder to this, please? Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Councillor Baxter, do you wish to speak to it? I'm assuming not. Councillor Kobayashi.
No, only to say
okay.
that the reasons for doing it again this year are exactly the same as doing it last year, and we should go ahead with it.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kobayashi, the seconder, I'm just giving you a
ditto. It's just a no-brainer. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. It wasn't that I was opposed to it. I actually want to make an amendment and change the date until October 31st, 2022. And I'm happy to explain why, Your Worship.
Okay, do I have a second? I'm going to have to clear your hand. Do I have a seconder to that motion? It is seconded, or excuse me, to the amendment, which is seconded by Councillor Jansen. Councillor Logan, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I just point out that October 31st, 2021 is really not that far away. We are likely still going to be in some sort of pandemic or economic recovery. And by extending it a year, we will recognize that these small businesses are still knee deep in financial trouble, and this gives them perhaps a little more opportunity to generate some additional income. But also it might encourage them to spend a little bit of money to spruce up the additional space. Because it will be worth their while. So, if we can provide them a little extra support by extending it a year, I think it'll go a long way.
Thank you. Councillor Logan, I'll just, before we move on to your amendment, there's a line at the last line that says, and further that no fees or deposits be charged for the 2021 year. Are you expecting, is that consistent? Or would you expect that there should be fees charged for 2022?
No, thank you, Your Worship. And I would add, as part of the amendment, 2021 and 2022.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to assume that Councillor Jansen's comfortable with that secondary addition. Councillor Jansen, you were second. Did you wish to speak to it? I'm not hearing anything, so
I shook my head. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, I can't see anybody right now, unfortunately. Thank you. Mr. Borhill, does this move us forward, your comments? Because I'd like to call the question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You caught the comment I was going to make about the fees. I just note that staff included the October 31st, 2021 date to align with the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch's extension of their rules. They're liberalizing the provision of liquor into patio settings.
So with that comment, Mr. Borhill, is this amendment going to be in conflict with the cannabis and alcohol?
I don't think so.
Regulations?
The reality is, if the branch doesn't extend its authorizations, then the restaurant and drink purveyors will be not allowed to provide drink in those areas, but that shouldn't be a major issue in terms of there being a disconnect between this resolution and the liquor board.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
Well, I guess I'll defer to Mr. Borhill. My sense would be that to be offside with what the provincial government regulations are is not where we want to be. I support the intent of the motion. I think it's a good motion. But I worry if we give somebody approval and, as Mr. Logan, Councillor Logan says, they go and spend some money to spruce up something for 2 years, and then the province says, oops, no, it's only 1 year. We might find ourselves in an awkward situation. Yeah. That's my concern.
Okay. Well, I'm sure if this motion is offside with provincial regulations, staff would also bring it back to us for further examination. I'm assuming, Mr. Earl, would that be correct, or Mr. Borhill?
Yeah, to clarify, my best guess is what would happen is that the restaurants wouldn't be able to serve liquor in those areas. They'd still be allowed to serve food. So.
Okay. I'm going to call the question on the amendment first, which was just changing the date to October 31st, 2022, and that no fees or deposits be changed, which was the change from 2021 and 2022. So this is just on the amendments first. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. I will come back to the main motion. Is there any other further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to bylaws. Council, I still need a mover and seconder for bylaws. I can't even do it. Excuse me, I can't do unanimous consent even if we all vote in favor. So the first is bylaw number 9.1, bylaw number 1862, main sewer LAS enlargement for 3441 Carger Terrace. This is for first, second, and third reading. That is moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 9.2, bylaw number 1863, West Sewer LAS enlargement for the same address, first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Baxter. May I have a seconded by Mayor Martin? Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 9.3, bylaw number 1864. This is the main sewer LAS enlargement for 530 Allendale Road for first, second, and third reading. This is moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to bylaw number 9.4, bylaw number 1865. This is West Sewer LAS enlargement for 530 Allendale for first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Mayor Martin. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 9.5, bylaw number 1866, main sewer LAS enlargement for 3337 Metchosin Road, first, second, and third reading. moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. I'm starting to sense that there's councillors who are racing to see if they can be the mover and seconder. So bylaw number 1868, main sewer LAS enlargement for 649 Carindale Road, first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the, oh, there is, excuse me. Councillor Baxter, do you wish to discuss? You're muted, Councillor Baxter.
I just wanted to say it's, and I have to be unmuted to do that apparently. I just want to say that it's wonderful to see so many people joining the system. It lowers the cost for everybody. Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Actually, 9.6 you skipped, and that was bylaw number 1867.
Okay, I will come back to that one.
Thank you.
So I am bylaw number 1868 right now. This is the main sewer LAS enlargement. I'll call the question. Sorry, I got to clear hands. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. My apologies, council. I'm going back to 9.6. Bylaw number 1867. This is a south sewer LAS enlargement for 3337 Metchosin Road. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 9.8. This is bylaw number 1869, West Sewer LAS enlargement for 649 Carindale, first, second, and third readings. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. 9.9, bylaw number 1870, main sewer, LAS for 549 Delora, first, second, and third reading. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Jansen. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 9.10, bylaw number 1871, West Sewer LAS enlargement for 549 Delora. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Baron Martin. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Logan. Thank you. Any objections? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. That is it for tonight. Good night.
Good night, all.